Ask your fellow collectors what their favorite toy or toy line was growing up, and you're sure to strike up a lengthy conversation. And with a seemingly infinite supply of options filling store aisles back in the day, your fellow action figure enthusiast certainly has a plethora of childhood memories to share. Now, what about the potentially missed opportunities? Toys that were planned to be put into full production, but were pulled for one reason or another. Sometimes these toys only exist as conceptual artistry sketches or very early prototypes. Other times, they make it further through the pre-production stage but stop short of getting a fully realized mass retail release. Still, some do make it into full production, but a late change in the engineering still sparks a discussion about a version of the toy we were supposed to get. And among the leading action figure brands during the vintage era of toys was Masters of the Universe. Yes, we had a huge assortment of toys to fill our heart's desire in the 1980s, but it's worth looking at some of the things that we could have had if plans hadn't changed. So stay tuned, because you won't want to miss this episode of the Toy Connections Toy History Series. Let's begin. Looking back at the sheer amount of figures, vehicles, and playsets we would get between 1982 and 1987, you'd immediately think that we got a full experience in enjoying our original Masters of the Universe toys. And it's hard to believe that we still could have had more, so what we'll do here is run down a selective list of toys that could have opened up a whole range of possibilities if they had been made. Of course, it's hard to begin any discussion about unproduced He-Man toys without bringing up the cancelled Powers of Grayskull sub-series that would have taken Masters of the Universe from 1987 and beyond. The story would have brought us back in time to Preternia, which is the ancient period before the Eternia we'd come to know and love. This tale would have centered around He-Ro, the most powerful wizard in the universe and who would have been the first receiver of the Power of Grayskull. Joined by his mentor Eldor, this would have been a fine pair of characters to extend the Masters of the Universe brand past 1987. Sadly, a lack of toy sales in 1987 and the disappointing box office performance of the live-action film closed the door on this toy line progressing any further. Yes, a small handful of toys would make it into full production for the Powers of Grayskull line, namely some of the dinosaurs. That said, limited releases have resulted in these being hard to find and highly sought after by hardcore He-Man collectors. But what about the gargantuan of a dinosaur that we didn't get? Gigantosaur appeared in a 1987 Mattel retailer's catalog and would have been such a huge toy that it would have even dwarfed the already large giants in Titus and Megator. Promotional photographs show that the belly could have opened up, so it clearly had some sort of mechanized internal workings for He-Man to sit and man a cannon turret. Interestingly, Gigantosaur was reworked from an earlier concept known as Turbosaurus, which would have also had opening panels for our heroic characters to set foot inside. Either way, this item remains very much on the wish list of Masters of the Universe fans right up to this day. Transitioning to other potential characters that we could have gotten, Mattel took in submissions from fans in the mid-1980s to have a character created for a future release in the line later down the road. 5 finalists were presented to us, and fans were asked to call in by December of 1985 to choose which item would be put into production. Eventually, 11-year-old Nathan Bittner's creation of Fearless Photog was chosen, a character who was meant to be a cameraman, and in cadence with the He-Man theme at the time, this character was meant to use his abilities to drain the evil enemies of their powers. Unfortunately, this item was never put into production during the 1980s. The other finalists consist of Netta, who was literally a net-like trap that would string up bad guys so that He-Man could come get them later on. There was Compactor, a villain whose chest was supposed to be a vice grip of sorts. I-Beam here is supposed to be a seeing eye guardian hero who guides the way for He-Man, and finally Brainwave, whose brain opens up to reveal a powerful crystal when you activate the button on his chest. It is also noteworthy to point out that the contest winner would also be the recipient of a $100,000 college scholarship, among other benefits, with the other 4 finalists getting a $50,000 scholarship. Mattel also set up the contest in such a way that each number you phoned when you voted was unique to the entry that you were voting for. And I know we already got several versions of both He-Man and Skeletor over the years, but here's some unmade, spring-loaded chest action ones that would have been welcome additions to the line. Notice there's no power sword for He-Man, nor Havoc staff for Skeletor in these sketches. Here's some characters drawn up by artist Ted Mayer, namely Bigfoot, with his metal boot and a spiked ball to kick, as well as Rotary Man, whose action feature was worked in with Hurricane Hordak eventually. This here is a strange character named Inflator, the chest feature of which was used on Mosquitor. This character over here would have been known as Brain, and a plant character with a removable shell was also thought up, an idea that would be used for the eventual King Hiss figure, who of course is quite well known for his removable outer skin shell. Here's a really neat concept that would have been called the Master Sorcerer. There was a unique aspect to this character in that when you opened up his robe, there was no actual body to be shown underneath, and it's worth pondering how this would have played out in toy form. And then we have this gruesome gobbling creature by Roger Sweet, and this would have taken on the name of Glob had it been put into production. And then this 4-legged character was conceptualized with the name of Q-Star and was drawn up by Mark Taylor. Q-Star was identified as a Rhino Man, and was to have a rotatable top part of his body to flip up or down, and like Battle Cat, he would have stationary legs. Now we have this very interesting character known as Gygor, who would have fit seamlessly into the line and apparently would have made use of Mattel's Big Jim Gorilla tooling from the 1970s, an idea that Mattel obviously had done in the past, both with Battle Cat and Panther, as well as Zor and Screech. Then there's a few vehicle concepts that never made it into production, which includes this amazing item called the Torton, which would have sat 5 heroic characters and held a villain in its claw arm. Imagine having this on your display shelves today. This was drawn up by designer Ed Watts, who would also conceptualize this multi-headed creature for Skeletor to ride on, as well as this water-based vehicle for sea adventures on Eternia. As for playsets, one large item we could have gotten was to be called the Treehouse Playset. With a working zipline and a retractable claw hand among other features, this could have been one of the iconic sets of the vintage Masters of the Universe era among the other large items that we already saw back in the day. And similar to the ever so iconic Castle Grayskull, this had something of a drawbridge at the front as well as a turret weapon of sorts for defense. Now, those of you who collect He-Man literature and reference guides may notice that much of the information here stems from the Art of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe book, which I highly recommend as it's a great visual guide to the figures and playsets that we could have had. I'm aware that we breezed by some of these figures pretty quickly, but the truth is that some of them simply don't have enough information other than an early design, while others could probably spin off into a whole video of their own. Having said all that, it's likely that many of these characters would have fit in very well into the Filmation cartoon. Do take note that some of the concepts here did make it into toy form several decades later. We would see them come to life in more modern Masters of the Universe interpretations, thus filling that character gap and satisfying our curiosity as fans who always wanted to have these toys made. That said, many of them have yet to make it into action figure form. Obviously, there's more to the discussion of unproduced figures than what could be talked about in a single video, so be sure to let us know in the comments section below if you heard of other unproduced Masters of the Universe concepts, and let us know which of the toys in this video happens to be your favorite. We will be sure to revisit this topic again in the future with some other unmade concepts. Certainly, there's no shortage of discussion points when it comes to the concepts proposed that never quite made it through the developmental pipeline. If anything, some of the artwork you're seeing here now can serve as a great platform for upcoming video ideas. To think there were still so many other possibilities that could have supplemented the toys we were already familiar with. The whole notion of unproduced figures adds a new level of intrigue to long-term collectors, which in turn brings about some great discussions and allows us to dream about what they would have looked like on the display shelves next to the toys we already own. And that not only goes for Masters of the Universe as a franchise, but for other vintage toy lines as well. And if you enjoyed this video, don't go anywhere just yet. I'm going to leave another Unproduced Toys video that you can click on right over here. Or to learn more about Masters of the Universe as a toy line, you can click on this history video right over here. And with that, good journey, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks again, and take care.